Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Dr. Shaheda?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Always attitude of gratitude.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure having you here today.
Shukran dalilan. I think this is a great opportunity and a privilege to be here with you today.
So, Dr. Shaheda, you've earned admiration from individuals and organizations around the world. Let's go back to the beginning. Who is Dr. Shaheda Bibi Omar? Can you do your background for us?
Okay, I just want to say firstly from the outset that I am Shaheda Bibi Omar. I'm a mother of 4 children, proudly so, and a grandmother of 9 grandchildren. Alhamdulillah, we've been blessed. I think that's our asset and our greatest wealth in life. And children are my passion. And who am I? I think I started this journey many years ago, more than 4 decades, where I feel that it was an act, a divine act, that nothing happens coincidentally or accidentally. I wanted always to be in the field of reaching out, healing, certainly healing people. And in that journey, my trajectory changed. So I continued that pathway where I went into the humanitarian sector, working with people, working with victims, with survivors of abuse, and started working with children and families many years ago. It was a special calling. I do not believe that it just happened. It was a calling. I wanted to pursue a medical career as a child. That was my ambition. And Allah obviously had a different pathway for me to pursue, which I do not regret, which I embrace so dearly because I love what I do. It's not a day or a life of working. It's a life of passion. And as we know that, working with others is actually more fulfilling than, and rewarding certainly, than when one looks at just your own self-interests. You make a living from what you do and a life from what you give.
100%. Oh, so would you say there was something in your upbringing that influenced your decision in your career?
So growing up from a very humble background, I think like many families out there in the apartheid era, I think I always say we had very little in terms of material assets, but we had a lot of kinship and that spirit of Ubuntu, where everybody cared for everybody. Everybody reached out to everybody. And I think that impacted a lot on my growth, my development, and my trajectory. And growing up in a home where I had a father who was my absolute role model, a very dynamic young man who was fearless and displayed the utmost of courage, who could actually stand up in any space or setting without even giving it a second thought. He could face any challenge and address anybody. That certainly impacted on who I am, what I wanted to be. That was certainly my mission, to be like that. And this vision of not being afraid, and to actually get out of that comfort zone and always be willing to sit in the courageous zone. So that was something that left an indelible imprint, not only on my brain, but even on my heart.
Yeah. And is there something, do you have a favorite childhood memory, maybe with your dad?
So lots of tender moments. I came from a very strict disciplinarian background, but lots of tender moments where, just on winter nights when I can recall us, my dad would come and just see to us and lift blankets and cover us, something that might have appeared to be so insignificant, but yet it was so significant. Just that bonding, that emotional connectedness.
Yes, I think that's important in any child's upbringing. So
And always that expectation that my dad had of us as children,
yes.
that never to give up. We can do it no matter what. So, that has sort of stuck in my life. I mean, my daily mantra is wake up, make up, show up, and never give up. And that's what, propels me on a daily basis, that this too shall pass, no matter what it is, that you'll get through this. You've done it before, and challenges are part of one's journey.
So would you say your parenting style is similar to that of your parents, because your children seem to follow the good work that you do?
So I think if we look at parenting styles, there are similarities, but there are also differences. Life is an ongoing lesson. And I think what has made my life so meaningful is learning lessons from the past, learning what worked well, learning what did not work well, and certainly doing a lot of introspection, reflection, and bringing in those things that needed to be done differently.
Yeah. Let's look at the Teddy Bear Foundation. What was the reason behind it? And can you take us to the heart of your vision and mission?
Okay. So I mentioned earlier, I was working in the children's sector previously, already working with children and families, working in child protection, working with abuse. And I was then headhunted by the Teddy Bear Foundation. At the time, the founding member, our late Professor Lorna Jacqueline, had approached me. And I saw this as a great opportunity for things that I had envisioned in terms of the children's sector, programs that I had already given some thought to it, which was not there, and it was just a concept, nothing that was tangible at that point in time. And so more than 25 years ago, I leaped at that opportunity and joined the Teddy Bear Foundation.
That's so beautiful. Is there any, I know every child's story matters, but is there any stories that stood out for you?
There are so many stories, but just as we speak, I think of one of my very close to heart stories. At the time, we were conducting forensic assessments. Now, forensic assessment is different from a forensic medical examination to establish if there's been any form or kind of abuse. And in the absence of medical evidence, often a forensic assessment is done, or even when there are findings suggestive of abuse and children cannot recall or are not willing to disclose, we do forensic assessments. So more than 25 years ago, I think it was in my first year, where a 12-year-old was brought from our medical clinic for an assessment, and she was pregnant at the time. A Muslim girl, a lovely girl, still attending school, and was brought in by a family member, significant family member, an aunt. And this young girl did not give a plausible explanation for her pregnancy, even though I tried to establish that there, it was an element of abuse. I had to try and even ascertain if, it was somebody known, not known. This young girl did not share anything. What is interesting is that in my parting, after the few sessions that I had with her, I said to her, 2 and 2 doesn't add up to 4. But remember, if and whenever you are ready, feel free to contact me. 12 years subsequent to that, this 12-year-old was now a 24-year-old who came, reached out to me. She had seen me in a TV interview and said to me, "You won't remember who I am, but you said I could contact you." And I did remember. And she was suffering because that baby she was expecting at the age of 12, they had a C-section. They gave the baby up for adoption, but what came out was that she was a victim of incest.
Mm.
And now she was suffering not only from post-traumatic stress disorder, she was suffering from, a depression, and suicidal thoughts and ideations. And she was resorting to self-destructive behavioral patterns where she was self-harming herself, cutting, and was not coping. She had other children and was not able to connect with them physically and emotionally, was not able to hug them or even show or demonstrate any level of affection. And she was having marital problems. But just to cut the story short is that she had an opportunity for closure. She came forward. She made the disclosure. She got the family together. They came face to face. She expressed her anger, the betrayal, and the guilt that she sat with, and how her family failed her in her hour of need, where they denied and pretended, which we all do. Let's pretend. And that's what she lived through all those 12 years. But subsequent to that, at least she was then able to move forward. There was some sense of closure. And of course, this journey continues, but it's just one of those stories very close to my heart, where this young girl said to me that the abuse does not define her. It does not punctuate who she is.
It's so devastating to hear that. I'm sure you deal with that kind of stories every single day. So how do you debrief when you go home? How do you separate your work from your personal life?
Such an important question, because doing this kind of work, we sit with a lot of trauma, vicarious trauma. There's a lot of transference. There's a lot of triggers as well, which often results in responses that comes from one's own baggage or one's own experiences or other, past trauma that as a counselor, as a therapist, one has encountered over the years. So something that really gives me strength is I always find that I have to reach out to our divine powers. It's going, turning to Allah. I think on a daily basis, it's not only is it the ritual of performing a regular salah, but of reciting the Holy Scriptures, reading the Quran. It's a kind of debriefing where one not only derives energy, strength, comfort, and solace, but it recharges the batteries. It's a constant reminder that there is a divine power watching over you, regardless of who, what, when, how. And that has certainly proven to be invaluable to me. And of course, something else that I'd like to also take into consideration is exercise. So I used to enjoy going to the gym. I don't have the luxury of time. So walking, releasing the stress hormones as well, and reducing the cortisol levels, because that certainly enables one to continue. So I think, those are things but we also have debriefing. So we have debriefing sessions with a clinical supervisor where we have a platform to express, to articulate, to voice our own concerns, fears, and worries and challenges. And also to appreciate and recognize that it's okay not to be okay.
So some of the biggest challenges in your industry?
So if you look at maybe one of the biggest challenges is compassion fatigue, the burnout, where people go into a total state of emotional collapse and cannot continue this kind of work because it is very emotionally charged and draining for any individual to endure. And often what we see as, even when, it's always difficult to identify the psychological challenges. Often you'll see the somatic conditions presenting or manifesting itself, where there's digestive problems, there's chronic headaches and other aches and pains, often where I've seen this and have also experienced it intermittently, but always seeking professional help, whether it's medical or psychological, to ensure that, I'm contained and I'm taken care of. So, it's certainly, if we look at challenges physically, emotionally, mentally, are some of the great challenges. We've also had colleagues who have committed suicide, completed acts of suicide, because they did not look at the red flags or were not aware or did not reach out in time. And that is something that is so important when you talk about how does one debrief. Debriefing is critical, it's essential, and it's certainly food for the soul, food for nurturing one's passion, but also getting the necessary containment and support.
So with children, what would be the telltale signs of abuse?
So with children, certainly the telltale signs one should look out for, and we always say this to caregivers, to parents, to guardians, that always look out for sudden changes in behavior. So if a child suddenly stops eating or is eating a lot, a child starts displaying the eating disorders, sleeping disorders, either sleeping far too much or not sleeping, having recurrent nightmares, a child who suddenly loses interest in any activities that they previously enjoyed, activities that they engaged in regularly, whether it's sports or any other extracurricular activities, and suddenly the child withdraws, isolates himself or herself, and also their grades. If they're attending school, one would find that sometimes the grades would plummet. And in some cases where children sublimate, so when we talk about sublimation, that's Freudian extract, where children try to assume a sense of power and control. So how do they do that? By excelling at school. So one has to contextualize these, manifestations. You cannot look at anything in isolation where suddenly a child is performing so well. So you think, oh, well, the child is achieving academically, so all is fine. I think those are things, or even when a child starts displaying behavioral disorders, staying out of school, refusing to go to school, throwing temper tantrums. Yeah. So one needs to look at patterns, frequency, duration, and severity of behavior. And we always say to parents and caregivers, look at things in context, not in isolation. But the rule of thumb is to, obviously be cautious. Yes. Always reach out to mental health professionals. If there's any doubt, it's important that parents and caregivers, reach out to the professionals to assist them and guide them. Never take things lightly. But I always say to parents, we would value parents that are eccentric and neurotic about children's behavior than those that are so lackadaisical and think, it will sort itself out. My child is just going through a phase. Yes, it may be so, but it may not be so as well. So a child that is easily weepy, crying all the time, or angry all the time, bullying suddenly, those are things that are telltale signs. There are many more, but I've just sort of highlighted a few.
Yeah. They always say when you look at a bully, you need to see why is he the bully.
And my favorite term of reference is that behind that bad child or mad child, there's a sad child.
That's so true, right? At what point, being in the Teddy Bear Foundation, did you realize that it was your true calling?
I would say in my first 3 years, I did a lot of training of lay counselors, developed in my first year already program. So developed the forensic assessment, developed the child-on-child sexual abuse offender program where children at the age of 4 and 5 years were attempted penetration of other children. And taking children through those interventions because we didn't have an intervention. We were approached by the Soweto Protea Court, and we got many other referrals subsequent to that. We had to think on our feet, run with the program, and then do an evaluation, an impact evaluation. And it was then that I realized there's hope for every child.
Yes.
That children are born, but champions are made. And we need to create those opportunities for children to be given a second chance in life.
Of course, yeah. That's so beautiful. It takes a really strong person to be in the field that you're in. What is the best compliment that you received?
So, yeah, I think about it often. And what is most, I would say, impactful or touching for me is often when I go to these huge meetings, government meetings, national platforms, conferences, and I have people coming to say to me, I was trained under you, and I have to make a confession. Sometimes I don't recognize them because it's like years ago, they were students or they were volunteers, and they're sitting now with PhDs and with postgraduate qualifications. And they said, you said this, you taught me this, you were a great mentor. For me, that's the greatest compliment of all, that, we continue to lead by following and disseminating and sharing information, imparting whatever skills one has acquired. And I think I always say when people ask me, so when are you going to retire? And I say, Allah has, showered me with an amanat, entrusted me with certain skills and knowledge. And I believe that it is my duty to certainly share that and spread the word.
So 3 most influential people in your life, and how have they impacted you?
So 3 most influential, I think I would like to say, as I mentioned earlier, it was my father, one of them. Then Professor Lorna Jacqueline, she handed me the baton, to continue the next journey. She ran with the organization. She was the founding member, and then she handed the baton over to me. So she certainly, I learned a lot from her. She was a great teacher, mentor. She was so generous in her teachings, her sharing of knowledge, her wisdom, and her intellect. So that was somebody else that really left that strong impact and imprint in my life. And then a neighbor that I grew up with, he was a librarian and introduced me to the love for reading. And always watched over us, even as siblings, always encouraging us, motivating us to aspire towards greater heights, never to give up despite the challenges or the odds that we faced.
It's amazing. You never know whose path you would cross that would actually impact you so much, eh? Is there any passion projects that you're currently working on?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I love, we always look at interventions and innovations. It's always about exploring new ideas, new platforms. And one of our pet projects is the canine therapy, the dog therapy, where children who have reported and opened criminal cases have to testify in court. So they have to undergo court preparation. And as part of their court preparation, we bring in dogs, the therapy dogs with the dog handlers. And the children get, so the important thing here, there's scientific merit in this MAD methodology, where we take the dogs into a courtroom, a real courtroom, and they wear the uniforms of the court personnel, magistrate, judge, defense, attorney, prosecutor, court orderly, etc. And we take children through role plays with this to allay their fears and anxieties around the daunting court process. However, when we talk about the methods of madness here. By stroking a furry object, it reduces the cortisol levels. It releases the happy hormones, the dopamines, the serotonin, and we actually improving a lot more on that. We've got the dog handlers who are also not paid for the service. They are volunteers, and they also have PhDs and other qualifications. But the most important of all is that they are passionate about what they do. And we've seen children coming in so anxious and fearful. And when they leave there, there's just a shift in the whole demeanor where they are feeling more confident, more contained, and willing to testify in court. So that's one of my pet projects. But the other one is the child-on-child sex offender program, where there as well we use music therapy. We know music is the food for the soul. And again, the therapeutic implications, because children usually leave at 5 in the morning to travel to school. They come in the afternoon after school for intervention. They come in as captive clients, not wanting to be there. They're not proud of what they've done. And we've, adapted our interventions, not just to be a talk therapy. So we bring in music, but the music is aligned to our different themes of empathy, problem-solving skills, conflict resolution, anger management, relapse prevention. So that music is aligned at each session. And what we do is we provide refreshment. So looking at hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs of food and shelter. But obviously you can't move to self-actualization if somebody's sitting with hunger pangs. And then, of course, if children are fearful, they know they've done wrong, they don't want to be there. They feel a sense of stigma. They feel, shame. So with the music therapists, these are qualified, trained therapists, where we get children, when we talk about empathy, learning to listen, active, deep listening. So we work in a group work intervention. They listen to others playing pieces of music, whether it's a beating of the drums, whatever. They compile proses, they compile verses, all relevant to whether it's gender-based violence, hurting others, all of that. And then this composition will be with the music components as well. So it's a very special, I would say, passion of mine. I started the project in 1999. It has since grown, and we've done 2 impact evaluation studies where 95% of the children that have gone through this intervention have not reoffended. Currently, as we speak, I'm busy working with a task team where we did a bit of research, and we're working with the unintended consequences of child pregnant learners. So we've developed content. We are capacitating other organizations in the facilitation. So it's prevention, early intervention, and intervention. So working on different levels, but it's also trying to reduce the levels that we are seeing, which are so alarming. And we've repeatedly said that we urge President Cyril Ramaphosa to declare this as a national pandemic, like gender-based violence, this as well, because of the alarming incidences of referrals that we are currently receiving across the country.
That's so eye-opening. I didn't even realize it's something so common.
And often I think it's euphemized, where we just make it sound like it's normal. We talk about teen pregnancy. A 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old is not a teenager. It's children birthing children.
That's so sad. That's such a sad situation. Those are very innovative ideas that you're working on, and I wish you lots of success with that. In the years of your personal experience as well as your career, how would you say that everything you've experienced has influenced yourself as a person, as well as the way you see the world?
So I think you asked such an important question. And the one thing I think that that I've internalized and assimilated into my repertoire is that nothing happens to you, it happens for you. I think that's what Rumi always speaks, and that's how I make sense of my life. This has happened because it has to happen. And I believe that it's preordained. I do believe that, Allah has...
Everything's written.
Yeah, everything is there for a reason. And that's how I continue my journey. And what I believe in is that the empathy, or, when one reaches out to another, it's not only helping that other person, that individual, the victim or the survivor, the beneficiary, but it's also helping you feeling more fulfilled, feeling that you have a purpose in life, that you have been put here for a purpose. And something that I always remind myself, and which I see repeatedly with children, is that an act of kindness, even the blind can see and the deaf can hear. And that is something that will catapult me to continue, never giving up.
That's absolutely beautiful. To close today, can you share some words of wisdom?
So in closing, I always say life can either make you bitter or better. And the important thing is that we need to realize we don't have control over the things that happen around us, for us, but we do have control on how we respond to whatever it is that we are faced with. Yes. And I think also never to forget there's always an eye watching over us, that the power of Allah, the power of the divine orders is always there. And this journey is never alone. It's always there with the support and the oversight of the Almighty.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. You truly are a beacon of light for all the children in South Africa, and I wish you every success. Thank you for joining me here today. It's been a pleasure.
Shukran dalilan. I think this has been a great opportunity for me.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.